Hello and welcome back to Better Than Yesterday. I'm super excited for this conversation that Michael and I are going to have this evening, which is going to entail our thoughts about what's currently trending in South Africa, and that is the elections that's going to be happening on the 29th of May. And yeah, so Michael, I hope you're going to enjoy this conversation tonight, and I'm glad that we can just be enthusiastic about this as young boys, young men. And yeah, so to hop into the first question, Michael, tell us a bit about how this build up is actually feeling for you, like in person rallies that might be happening around you and these type of things, man.
Yeah, so from my perspective here, I think that there's almost a bit of apathy, especially from young people in South Africa, just about the whole elections. And I think it's because there's a bit of a lack of belief
Yeah.
actually that much is going to change. I think, there's
Mm.
been murmurs and, complaining happening about the government and all of that in South Africa for so long. Nothing has really
Yeah.
changed for also so long. I mean, you look at the last 4 years, let's say, where Cyril Ramaphosa has been, our president. God bless the president.
Yeah.
But I think to give a real opinion on that, and I don't think this is too controversial to say, but a lot of people were thinking that things might get
Mm.
a lot better with a guy like Jacob Zuma leaving, who was there was a lot of corruption around him and so on. I think a lot of people thought that things would get better.
Mm.
But yeah, you look at the last 4 years, and I speak to young people around me, people my age, and there's almost the feeling that he's just let the country get worse. And I think there's a bit of a lack of belief
Yeah.
among young people at the moment that things can actually change here in South Africa. So yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
it's hard, you want to maintain a positive bent, as you say, but I genuinely do feel that that is the kind of
Yeah.
feeling from young people around me is just that there's nothing's
Yeah.
going to change. So there's not much we can do about it. But what would you
Mm.
say to counter that, man?
Yeah. So in a counter, I think that's why it's important for young people to go out in numbers and vote. Because if we look at the South African population, there's a like a quite a big number of the population
That's true.
that's being made up of by the youth.
Yeah,
And when we look at the youth, if we're looking at it politically, youth age ends at 35. So a major part of the population is like the workforce, which is youth. And by us as youth going out and then voting, so I'll probably be voting at the South African embassy here in Namibia, but
shout out.
going out and voting and actually choosing a different party than the ANC, or some of the youth might say, okay, we're going to stick to the ANC, and they have their reasons, but choosing a different party and actually going out to vote instead of just sitting there and looking at how things aren't very positive currently in South Africa would then not help the situation. But one vote can, like, it doesn't look like it's significant, but it can help, especially if we're as youth thinking along the
Yeah,
same way and end up surprising each other by voting for the same party, which could be a different party. We don't want to mislead our viewers or you guys listening this evening into voting for a certain party because we aren't affiliated to any party. But I think it's important to, as youth, to become
yeah,
involved in the political sphere, especially even if it's just this last month, and really deciding on a party that you want to vote for that aligns with your visions and then going for that. So that might be a way that changes the landscape economically and socially in South Africa going forward into the next 4 years. Yeah, so just to add a bit of excitement as well on this political election that's coming up is that there's going to be independent candidates that are running for presidency, and these independent candidates don't have to be part of a party like the DA or the ANC. They don't have to be affiliated to any party, so they can just decide, I want to make a difference and I'm going to run for presidency. And if they get a certain number of support, so this comes through people ticking and saying yes, we support them to run for a presidency. I think it's like 100,000 people, somewhere around there. I'm not totally sure. Then they can run for presidency. But in that, Michael, let's say you decided you wanted to run for president. What's three things that you would do differently, looking at all the problems or looking at the way the country was being run this past 34 years? What's three things that you would have applied different, big or small?
Sure. I think the world is waiting for the day that Mike runs for president. But no, it's an interesting question, man. Like you say, I think probably a question that, young people should know how to answer. And yeah, it's something that you have to put a good amount of thought into. But I think what jumps out to me, that I think we definitely could do with more of in this country, of South
Mm,
Africa, our home being more local production of goods, and I think
sure.
less of a focus on importing, and
Mm-hmm.
rather producing our own goods and also then exporting that. So, I saw an
Yeah.
interesting article the other day that was talking about how, leading up to COVID, the world was just becoming more and more and more like globalized. Obviously, there was tons of like exchange of goods and services and all sorts,
Mm-hmm.
But what they were saying is that actually some of the effects that happened, after that pandemic, is that
Mm,
countries have actually started to look inwards a little bit more, and they've been starting to produce, and actually, develop their economy more from within than obviously just dealing with other
mm,
countries and bringing products and services
yeah.
in. So that's quite an interesting effect to see, and I think that's something that South Africa could definitely do more of.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of people that need work, so I think this comes
Yes.
into solving another problem, in that if you
Mm-hmm.
are producing, if you are focusing on building goods in your country, it's going to create more jobs because there's going to be factories that need to be built. There's going to be people that need to be working in those factories to start producing these goods that you used to just import. You know what I mean? So again,
Yeah.
what that'll do is also start to create a bit more employment, and I honestly think that's the biggest problem that we have. I mean,
Mm.
being young South Africans ourselves, man, like I see it around me how difficult it is to actually find employment, and especially
Employment.
employment
Yeah.
that pays any type of decent
Mm-hmm.
wage. So yeah, look, it's not
Yes.
easy for young people out here, and I think that's why sometimes there's
Mm.
that lack of belief and lack of hope. Um, but yeah, I mean that's what we need. I mean, I don't know the stats exactly at the moment, but I know it's somewhere between 40 and 50% of youth
Sure.
are unemployed, man. So it's not a good thing to see. So I think yeah, we definitely need to
Mm.
focus on that, by creating more jobs in the country. And I think one other
Yeah.
way, to get a third point to um, combat that lack of employment would be to
Yes.
obviously focus on tourism. That's something that South
Mm-hmm.
Africa has been doing, and specifically Cape Town has been doing very well. I worked
Mm-hmm.
in the waterfront for the last 6 or 7 months, and what I know is that I think this year, there was a couple million people that were passing through the waterfront
Sure.
every day, and in Cape Town, specifically in that small area. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of interest in coming to Cape Town and coming to South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, there's a lot of opportunity that is there in the world of tourism. I mean, there's so much
Mm.
else that South Africa has to offer apart from just Cape Town, Kruger National
Yeah.
Park and all of this. So yeah, I would definitely focus in on tourism, make, and again, that will bring in more jobs. It'll bring in more
Mm-hmm.
investments into the country. So those are a few things that I
Yeah.
can think of, man. Yeah. Dan, I know you've been staying in Namibia, obviously the last while. But yeah, being a South African citizen, man, like, are there some things that you see about the way that Namibia is being run that maybe South Africa could learn from, or maybe some things that you see that yeah, that we should perhaps implement here, and that Namibia is actually doing perhaps a bit better than us?
Sure, that's a good question. If I have to think right off the bat of something that Namibia is doing in a good way, is that there's a lot of tribalism that's still going on in Namibia. So way less racism, I would say, compared to in South Africa, both
Hmm.
from like the black side, white side, colored side. So like the tribalism is what there's often, it's like, no, but a bastard or a colored, they drink a lot or something like that, but they might point out like these things. Though when it comes to employing people, then they wouldn't ask, do you belong to a certain ethnic group? Are you colored? Are you black? Are you white?
Hmm.
Not very often, perhaps in the
That's
private
interesting.
sector, but not in the government sector. So that's something that's cool here in Namibia, where you get employed based off merit. There is sort of like a system where they try and diversify things and have leadership being quite diverse, but a lot of time it's based on merit, and this is just my personal opinion. And then also they are giving youth a lot of opportunities now through internships. So it might not be a full time job, but there's a lot of initiatives that the government has brought out, which I don't know if they do that in South Africa as well. But here in Namibia, if youth is being employed in internship programs, then the companies benefit by like tax. They pay a bit less tax because they're employing the youth and training them and skilling them,
Yeah,
even if you're only getting a certain amount of money, and it's not like a full-time employment salary. But so there's that, to give youth the practical skills to learn how to do things on the job and apply what they've learned in university. Then thinking of it also, what's currently happening in Namibia is that we are focusing on our strength, and that's things like the tourism that you've just talked about,
mm-hmm.
that's also that also provides a lot of income into Namibia. And then also the way our company, or not our company but our country, runs the like the green hydrogen that's currently happening now.
Yes, yes,
So our president just actually, I think it was in last week, where they launched the green hydrogen fueling station in Walvis Bay, and the president of the king actually of what's the country? I can't recall it now, but Berlin or something like that.
uh,
He was here to help launch the program because they're big investors. So we are currently having, like, there was a truck there that's also running on hydrogen. So what Namibia is trying to do is to be the global leaders in hydrogen and producing it, not just in Africa but in the world, and not just consuming hydrogen within Namibia, but actually being like an exporter of it,
I see.
using the solar systems in the desert, there in Walvis Bay, to generate this. And obviously, there's different components. I'm not very technical when it comes to the hydrogen. And then what that's also something South Africa can do with the coal that it's producing, because I know
Yeah,
that there's a lot of scandals and corruptions going on about that, the electricity being such a big problem, but South Africa still having so much coal sources. I was watching this video where Thabo Mbeki, he was doing a speech or like a keynote at one of the schools that he runs for UNISA. I think it was a graduation program, and he talked about how ESCOM was actually sabotaged. There was this tender being given out, and an Indian company that came into South Africa to help build a new power station, and them being dismissed because of the BE system and leaving South Africa. So it was only completed up to phase one, and there was four phases, something in that line. And if that was done, electricity wouldn't be a problem in South Africa right now. So South Africa has a lot of potential when it comes to electricity generations.
Yeah,
So it's just the management of the resources, of the coal,
100%.
of that mining that could be done a bit better. This is just also, once again, my opinion as an outsider, because we really don't know what's going in within. But
Mm.
there's a lot of corruption and a lot of sabotage that's happening, perhaps because the people or the families that were in power back then still want to stay in power. And there's a lot of different
Yeah,
perspectives or people's opinions on how this is happening within South Africa. But just to get back to the election and why it's so important for us as youth to kind of be involved is the ruling party also this like they decide on the laws that are being passed, the constitution.
yeah,
And South Africa had quite a good constitution when it comes to how it was, what they expected it to do, and how it had to handle the gap between the poor and the rich, and empower the majority in South Africa, and give them opportunities. But we know that a lot of these things weren't such a big success. But if you have to look back at the last 10 years, Michael, can you just highlight like one positive thing that South Africa has been getting right? Maybe not in the public or the government side of things, but maybe privately. What's some positives that you can highlight there?
Hmm. Sure. I mean, that's a good question, because it's so easy to sit and point out the negatives of your country all day long and then the
Mm,
way it's being run. But this might sound like a bit of a funny answer, but I think one thing that South Africa's been doing well as of late is actually our sport. We've been
yes,
thriving in
yes.
many different sports. Obviously, winning the Rugby World Cup and doing really well in the cricket
Mm-hmm.
as well. Obviously, South
Yeah,
African winning a UFC belt. So I think those kind of things might seem a bit funny, but it actually doesn't happen by accident. There's obviously a lot of
yeah.
good work being done behind the scenes in terms of developing young sports people. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's one thing that stands out to me that the country's actually been doing quite well on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And that's why a lot of people were commenting on why don't the Springboks just take over and run the country, because they've been doing it so well
They've
in
been doing
in
it so
like
well.
even yeah, like bringing out the diversity, showing that the country can work together.
Yeah,
Blacks
no,
can work together with whites, and coloreds can, and they can actually become a powerful force if they put race aside. And I think that's something that needs to
100%.
be implemented in South Africa by actually viewing people as a person and not from a racial side of things. And
So important.
that's what I adore with our friendships, and even the friends that we have. We've never really cared about color. Like it's never been a
100%.
problem for us, and that's so cool. So I
It's
think
true.
coming to a certain point with this video is that politically, I think we need to start, or the country needs to start getting the basics right.
Yeah,
That's also a takeaway we can see from the rugby, getting the basics right and start building from there. So after this elections, I think it's gonna be a make or a break for South Africa. Even if
I do
if
agree.
it's a break, the country, the political party, whoever wins, needs to look at rebuilding South Africa, getting
Mm.
out the corruption, the corrupt people, like taking out the weeds of the in the garden, and rebuilding, like starting off fresh. And so this is going to be an important election. People are comparing it to 1994, which you can't really do. Um, but it is something major. I actually predict a coalition happening, ANC losing the majority and having to partner with a couple of other parties. That's my point of view. And in closing, what's your prediction, man, for the outcome of this elections?
Wow. Um, sure. I must say from what I'm hearing, man, if I had to predict, honestly, what I think would happen is that things won't change very much. If you look at the last election, all that happened was the ANC lost a small percentage of the majority vote, but still maintained that. And if I had to predict, I still believe that they will keep the majority. But I think obviously
Okay.
there will be more votes swinging towards the way of other parties, which means they have more seats on parliament and so on. But yeah, I
Yeah.
must say, I do hope that there's a change because, like you say, I think South Africa, like you say, man, it's it's quite dire times in that the country's headed on a downfall at the moment, and someone needs to come in and turn it around, man. So we definitely do need that change.
Yeah.
So hoping for the best, but yeah, that's definitely my predictions, man. But I think it's been so cool
Sure.
to yeah just have a conversation, man. Like open the floor, and
Yeah.
that's what we want to do to you guys as well in the comments section, and yeah, just let us know like what as fellow young people, of Africa and South Africa, maybe even from an outside perspective, just let us know what you guys are thinking about this upcoming elections. And yeah, that's what really all we wanted to do is just to open the floor and also to hopefully encourage a bit of positivity about actually going out to vote and
Yes.
like you say, getting involved on the political front, man.
Yeah. No, it was a good conversation. Great to hear your thoughts as well on, especially like leading the country, getting a bit of industrialization. That's
Mm,
important. That's also going to be creating jobs. Even looking at manufacturing the raw materials that we're currently exporting so much, and then sending it out as finished or semi-finished products, getting more
mm.
value from that. But yeah, it's been great. Thanks for making it to the end. If you've done so, make sure to like and subscribe, and even give your insights in the comments. We'd appreciate that, and we definitely are keen to interact with you on the comment section as well. But yeah, so that's it from us here at Better Than Yesterday. Much love. Cheers.
Cheers.